David's rejoining, is he?
Yeah, I think he wants me to email him the link so he can come on his laptop, I think was what he...
Okay. All right, David. Well, everyone, we're live. Hi, everyone. We've kept the time for a reason. Because a lot of other channels are on earlier, but we thought we'd best being our own time, and that's why we kept it. So I can see some people have said goodbye, but I hope FS, I hope you're still there. And we should have done it earlier because that's the time we've got it. So welcome, everybody. This is Norman Koshnick here from Eyes on Cricket with Norman Koshnick. We've got Chris Vernon, the lovely Pretty Upalo.
Namaste. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. And is it morning in your time?
Yes.
Well, it's very much morning where I am.
I'm sure it is.
And we've also got Aparna's coming on, I believe. She's only 2 seconds away. But it has no one was expecting, of course, this to finish so early. No one. So it is somewhat of and people need to digest. David's back.
I'm back.
Perfect. And loud and clear too, which is sensational. Thank you, David. Now, you've previously met David, haven't you?
Yeah.
No, this is my first. We have not been introduced.
Oh, okay. Well, David Gray, this is Pretty Upala. You know Chris, you know me.
Pleased to meet you.
Hi, David. Nice to meet you.
So Pretty's coming all the way from California in the USA. She's our USA and really world connection. She had Indian background, American domicile now, has lived in Australia. Where haven't you lived? She's been to over 100. Well, she's been to 100 countries. Amazingly so.
My father used to live in America, Pretty. So he
really, whereabouts?
Very topical. He used to live on Jupiter Island, where Tiger Woods lives.
In Florida?
In Florida, yeah. The most expensive bit of real estate in the whole country, by all accounts.
Is that where you were living, David?
No, that's where my dad used to live.
Oh, right.
Greg Norman used to live there. Nick Price, a series of pro golfers.
It is so funny you talk about Greg Norman and Jupiter Island because I jokingly put a photograph of that particular home, which has just been sold for some $75 million. Yeah. And I jokingly put those photos on Pretty's Twitter account, making up them to be her place, which was quite funny. It's funny the timing of you saying that. All right, guys. I mean, what happened in this test match? I mean, I'm totally gobsmacked there hasn't been many games which has actually finished, finished so short. There must be one of the record finishes of a test match. Chris, do you know of a time of a test match finishing earlier?
I can't think of many. I know I can think of a couple of 2-day tests, but I can't.
You, Norman, but they're first-class matches.
Or first-class matches.
Yeah.
Norman, I spoke to you an hour before you dozed off, maybe about an hour and a half before the game actually finished. So you were very, very close. You were up until almost the very end. And I didn't think that, because we were sort of in the middle of a conversation, and then I guess an hour and a half later, I didn't hear from you.
So, I mean, again, I did say, and I made it clear back then.
You did, yes.
The reality was, I mean, they didn't get 90. They didn't get 94. They got 81, which was hilarious because we were jokingly talking about 94. The fact that they were done for 49, it was such an emphatic way to win the match, quite frankly.
Yes.
Don't you think, Dave?
That was the one thing I did get right, that the required runs would be less than 50.
Well, you're 0 for 2 in 3 balls, Norman. It's not exactly a position of strength, really. So
I mean, in fact, it was the first 4 balls that floored me. They literally could have taken wickets on all first 4 balls. And how often do you see that? And look, no matter what anyone says, you can't. I don't want to get into the pitch because I don't
Yeah,
think the pitch.
that is not an excuse, and that should not be the conversation at all for any matches, even including this match.
Let's put it like this, Freddie. If that was in England, all right, and you were having to deal with forward ticket sales, there would be an absolute mutiny. Because I was a selector the last short Test match. I think Chris would be able to look at his records, which was England versus the West Indies.
2001, 2000, yeah.
And this is the one where Curly Ambrose bowled the first ball to Mike Atherton, and it hit the sight screen at Birmingham first bounce. It was 1995, and we needed a police escort to go to the press conference, which was halfway through Saturday, which would have been two and a bit days. And I was having mothers send me their tickets. They'd been saving up to go on Saturday or Sunday. The fact that there was, didn't appear to be, I can assure you if there were England supporters who'd gone to the match, then you might have had some reaction. But in the end, they were outplayed. It didn't matter what the wicket did. I don't think it was a particularly good Test match wicket. But in the end, they were outplayed by a better team. Simple as that, really. And they had the position 75 for 2, day one. And the ball had already started to turn. So if you set your stall out to get 250 in that time, then you're in the game. You're not going to win too many games if you get bowled out for 112 in the first innings.
Yeah.
But yet, as it happened, they managed to claw their way back just. But I don't know what Chris and Norman think. Or what do you think is actually a lead of 30 on a wicket like that? What does that equate to on not a normal wicket or a better wicket that you can bat on? So that would be, I think it's nearly over 100 actually. So.
Oh, easily.
Yeah.
But okay,
so if you have a 100 lead in the first innings, then you're in control.
But then it still doesn't explain how a team can be none for 49 in that last innings. Realistically, the pressure and the condition of the pitch, if it were like that, they should have been 4 or 5 down.
It was really looking beautiful. The third session, that's when the runs were to be made. I just think that the teams got the timing wrong.
But I also think the dew would have played a part, that it was skidded onto the bat.
It was cooler too.
And then I tell you what, Norman, if they'd lost a couple of wickets in those 2 overs before dinner, things would have changed slightly. They would have had a lot of time to have a knee knocking moment in the dressing room. They're waiting to go out to bat, because the Indians also knew they've got quite a long tail as well. So if the first 5 don't get it, I was surprised that, we won't know, but I would have said, actually, I would have sent the wicketkeeper in to open the batting and just tell him to play, just do what you normally do, just have a free hit.
Are we talking about Rishabh Pant?
Yeah, so if you only have 3 or 4 rows of him, you've broken the back of whatever figure it is. So
exactly,
they managed to do that. But there were some interesting observations for me, that the way that Patel bowls. I was a left-arm spinner in my playing days, Norman. So
that's right.
Normally left-arm spinners bowl quite wide on the crease, and I've noticed over a few years that the Indians left-arm spinners, I suppose I don't want to overcomplicate it, but the line that they have, and this is more of white ball cricket, that to guide the umpires in terms of wides, is about halfway through the popping crease. And the left-arm spinners tend not to bowl any wider than that on the crease. So what I'm trying to say is, they showed a graph at the end of the game that both Leach and Patel bowl really exceptionally well, but Patel bowls much straighter. So therefore, you miss it with your bat and it hits you on the pad, you are going to be right in the business area to be given out. And as opposed to the Victorian times when I played, through technology, a lot more people get given out hit on the front pad than they used to be 25 years ago. I was always told by old umpires who were international cricketers, well, the ball's got too far to travel, I can't tell, which I always used to think was a load of nonsense, but there you go. You couldn't challenge it because of referring it to a technical way of doing it. So their spinners, the Indian spinners, bowled much straighter. And actually, if you saw the ball when Patel was bowling it, quite often it went round like a saucer. So the seam, instead of being upright or pointing to first slip, was actually going round and round. So therefore, it would hit the shiny side and then go straight on. They're very clever. They use either have it upright or horizontal, and it would react in a different way when they landed. Sorry to over-technicalise the whole thing, but there you go. I wish I could have done it in my career.
The reality is you've got some great points, and I've just nudged Monty Panesar as well, because he would be relevant to come and talk about it, because he's also a left-arm spinner.
Yeah, no. Monty, I selected Monty to play for England, so.
Also, it's safe to bring. So, David, it's safe to bring Monty on. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, no, we haven't fallen out or anything like that, so don't worry.
It's so funny, David, because we had Adam on, I think, yesterday, and we talked about you, and he talked extremely highly about you, but he did say that you not only selected him, you also sacked him.
Yeah, they all say that, so don't worry. So that is the downside. And actually, to be fair, though I selected a number of people, the number of people, when you phone them up, and I phoned everybody up. So there was a time when my uncle played for England, they used to listen to the radio on Sunday. Team would be announced at 12 o'clock. On Monday morning, and they're trusting the Mail in the UK to do this, they would have an invitation like to a birthday or to a party. You have been invited to represent England versus India at Lord's starting on Thursday. We'd like you to come along on Wednesday for lunch and have a light practice in the afternoon, and then we will play the game the following day. For the princely sum of £250, that's what they got paid for then. So, I think things have changed slightly. But going back to me as a selector, I used to ring every player, good or bad news. And
that's good.
I have to say the bad news bit was interesting as far as I didn't know some of the players knew, excuse me, in front of the two ladies, the language that I got coming down the telephone, and some of the phone calls were very brief, and some of them didn't actually speak to me for some time after that, actually, like years after that.
Oh, you're kidding me.
So
just quickly, David, we should introduce Aparna. Aparna Saini is there as well. Have you met David?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, no, we were on the call the last time.
Of course you have.
But the funniest call I've ever had was for a tournament that took place in Sharjah. It was actually England won, beating India, Pakistan, and the West Indies. And Darren Goff was injured, so I found a guy called Matthew Fleming, who used to play for Kent, who was a friend of mine. So that was nice. So I said, Jazz. Because his uncle wrote the Bond books, Ian Fleming. So he was, and the family owned Fleming's Merchant Bank or whatever. But anyway, lovely man, really good cricketer. So I ring about some of the reactions when you deliver good news. Sometimes it was quite interesting. Sometimes there was a silence down the phone. Sometimes there was burst into tears, drop the phone, or do whatever. In Jazz's case, he said, Rav, can I just come back to you? I just need to look at my diary to see if I can accommodate you. So he did, because I just needed to work out when the grouse season started, because I need to go shooting. So he could accommodate me or England for that particular trip, which is great.
Oh my gosh. So who was the very first person you actually selected that you spoke to, let's say? Can you remember the first person you ever selected?
I can remember because we also used to read the teams out live, sometimes from Lords. So there was a team, Michael Atherton, and it's done in alphabetical order. And I worked down this list, and I started off Michael Atherton, and I think the next name was Mark Butcher. And then I had a mental block because the next name was actually was a Crawley. And I couldn't remember whether it was Mark Crawley or John Crawley. So I then changed from, instead of Christian name, surname, just to read out the surnames. And nobody spotted what I'd done that. Because the last thing you wanted, well, it's a bit like the Taylors got selected for Australia. They announced the wrong Taylor.
Oh, my heavens. I mean, it's funny because you mentioned the name Crawley. And Simon, I think you were there, I'm not sure. Simon actually picked up the fact that I kept calling Zach Crawley. What did I call him, Chris? I called him...
I can't remember.
John
Jack.
Crawley?
Jack.
Jack. I call him Jack Crawley by accident as opposed to Zach. And
Right.
It must be the name Crawley that has a problem with the first name.
Well,
Right,
they both played. The two, John Crawley played, and Mark Crawley weren't related. They weren't brothers. Mark Crawley played a bit for Nottingham, and ironically, or for him, he was actually in one of the towers at 9/11, but at the bottom floor, so he managed to get out. So, but John Crawley's been invited. John Crawley was, really talented player. Really, actually, ironically, really talented player playing spin.
All right, we're going to talk more about
We took him to Australia instead, so he could have his head blown off. So
David, we're going to come back to your discussions because that intrigues me no end. In particular, I think of Doug Walters, who when he was selected, obviously it wasn't you that selected him, but he would be in front of a radio hearing his name. He was at a post office when he found out he played for Australia. He had to pick up his baggy green cap and clothing from a post office. Everything was post office related in his day. Everything happened at the post office.
I did make a mistake, actually. We were trying to find young guys on a Saturday night, which was a bit of a challenge, I'd have to say. So Graham Swan in particular was a very elusive chap, because the last thing you want to do is for them to hear on the radio or from a third party. You want to be, and particularly when it's good news, to let them know what's happening. So
it's a bit like you were the Lotto. You're the person from Lotto ringing up and telling them they'd won $50 million. It was probably the same experience for you.
Well, having not been good enough to play for England, I can only imagine the joy of being told that you're representing your country and what that means.
And what an honour you had to do that too. It's not just.
I always regard it as an honour. Not sure about the one you've been dropped is such a great honour, but it's a duty that should happen. So,
okay, I have to do this before we start. David, pretend you're ringing me. Let me see my reaction. If I want someone to tell me I made for my country, but you have to say you're Australian. So just bore me with that. Okay. So ring. I'm just picking up the phone. I'll pick up the phone.
Yeah. If you're picking up the phone, all right.
Hello.
Then I would just merely say,
hello. I'm hearing
them.
Who's that? Am I hearing someone? Who's that?
Yeah, this is David Graydon speaking. Norman. We have.
Hi, David.
I'm just ringing you to give you some really fantastic news that you've actually been selected in the squad to play for England at the next Test match at Trent Bridge. The coaches will ring you and let you know the logistics. You'll be expected to get to Trent Bridge on Monday for practice. So I'm delighted for you and your family. I don't expect it to be on social media because it's a Saturday and it's not announced publicly until Sunday. And be assured, if it suddenly appears in social media, this might be the one and only time you get selected.
I can't believe it. Actually, is this Stephen? I bet you it's Stephen. You're geeing me up, Stephen, aren't you? You aren't David Gravely. Come on. I don't believe you at all. Me picked for England? There's no hope in hell. Is this really David? I don't believe it.
That sort of reaction I have had, actually. So,
That's funny.
you are joking. It's
You're
actually
joking. I
more,
bet you must have got that.
it's more what I also did is any letter that I received, and if, I've always taken the view, anybody who wrote to me, and it would be critical. So I always, if they left a telephone number, I'd ring them back and
Of
have
course.
a chat. And that would be the silence phone call, because I wouldn't know the individual. So I'd be saying, "This is David Gradney," and I could see the cogs of the brain going round and round saying, "This must be a joke." So, and it wasn't. So, and I had a very sanitary lesson. The first time I got a letter that was, quite abusive and whatever. So I was sort of all armed to give it both barrels down the telephone line, and it transpired to be a bloke who was 30 years old, paralysed as a result of a car accident when he was young, and watching cricket was his life. So it was a sanitary lesson to me that you have to realise how important cricket is.
True.
And all the period of time that I was a selector, I used to ring him to run the team past him, like sort of saying, "Well, what do you think about this team?" So I sort of, and we spoke all the time for all the period of time I was a selector. So there are different ways to treat people.
That's magnificent. Thank you very much. And for those viewers who may have just tuned in and are wondering who David is, he was the head selector, the head of the selection panel for the England cricket team. For how many years again?
I became a selector in 1995. And then I became chairman in 1997. 3 one-day series that we played against, and this is when Ben Holyoke and Adam Holyoke made their debut. We won 3-0. We then went to Edgbaston to play the first test, and at lunch on the first day, Australia were 80 for 9. And I was thinking, well, this must be a very easy job being chairman of selectors. We had to win that test match, and then at Lords, I think Glenn McGrath took 8 for 20. And sort of,
My God.
I
should use the correct title. In fact, chairman of selectors, not head of selectors.
So it was 1997 for 10 years.
Magnificent.
I was the longest serving chairman of selectors since the Second World War. So I'm not sure whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, actually. But
I think it's an excellent thing. It's just testament to everyone that I've spoken to, including the likes of Adam Holly. They spoke very highly of you, and they don't just speak highly of you because they're hoping to get selected again. Of course, they appreciate what you did for them. All right, Chris, you look like you're moping up in that top corner there.
Not moping.
Are you moping?
Not
anyone
moping.
Your hand on your head like this. You take your hand.
I'm not moping at all.
Do you need to find a safe space, Chris?
I'm in a perfectly safe space in the West Wing over here. I just I just think that I think David was quite polite in what he said, but that wicket was a very, very, very poor Test match cricket wicket. Whether you like him saying it or not, if Test cricket was played on a wicket like that every time, Test cricket wouldn't be a thing. The game would just be white ball cricket, because no one can justify 30 wickets in a day and a half. And it's really poor. And India were the better side and deserved to win. But let's face it, India won the test because their bowling was good. Their batting lineup was embarrassed by Joe Root this morning. Whether you like it or not, India's batting lineup at home, which is probably the best in those conditions in the world, was embarrassed by a part-time spinner. And that tells you all you need to know about that wicket. If that was day 5, fine, no issues at all. That was session 1 of day 2 of a test match. And it's just a shame. The best cricket wickets are the ones that go into day 5 and have long 4 innings matches. And the fact that India set 140 and that was a pass score on a wicket, it just shows how poor it was. And I agree, it's a home advantage. But what's a good cricket wicket? A fair contest between bat and ball, and it wasn't that at all.
Well, I tell you what, Joe Root,
how was it a fair contest between bat and ball? 30 wickets, 29 to spin, in a day and a half.
So what was worse than the Indian lineup was the English lineup, FYI.
Well, England
And
don't know how to
also,
play in those conditions.
don't forget, this is a baby. This is a brand new, newly renovated
That's got nothing to do with it.
stadium has not. It's virgin. It hasn't really been played much at all. I mean, give it a few tests and see what happens.
I disagree completely. They've played first. They've played some cricket on it. In a month's time, when the IPL is on that ground, that wicket will be hard, flat, and bouncy, and there'll be 250 runs scored and 20 overs on it. So
that's what I'm saying, though, right?
And the next test it'll be flat. It's not the Indians.
Okay.
The
Just,
wicket was poor,
I want you to both be careful about the pitch situation. I can understand both of your perspectives, but the reality is this was a test match that was played in the manner that it was. You had a team scored none for 49 in the fourth innings.
Oh, that's irrelevant, that fourth innings score. It's pressure's off. England have to try and take 10 wickets. And has nothing to do with it.
David, what were you saying?
I would say that actually the 49 for naught can't compare to the other three innings. I think if you're in the batting side, you've got a small target to go for. And the batting side would say, right, let's be really, really positive. Let's try and get to half the number as soon as we can, which in the end breaks the spirit of the fielding team. If India had taken a couple of wickets in those 2 overs before lunch, that could have had but I know that in the backdrop of India being bowled out for 39 already this winter in Australia, but it's unlikely. Well, it just wouldn't happen again. But you never know these days. The one thing I would say about the first of all, you wouldn't be wanting to take a profession as a seam bowler if we're going to be playing on those wickets, because I don't quite know what you do for how many days you're going to play, because they had a minimal role to play. And I would have to say that the Australian wickets against India, I thought were outstanding test match wickets, because they basically had everything. It seemed to start with, so that was a challenge. There was a period in the middle where it was batsman friendly, and it did spin in the end. And as a result of that, the test matches went the distance. But I've been involved in more as a captain, Norman, than anything else, to try and produce wickets that you take the draw out of the equation. And that more happens in England because you have the weather that you've got to deal with. And sometimes you need to do everything to try and win the game. And I think in India's situation, having lost the first test match, I'm not sure what the relationship is between Ravi, Virat and the ground staff in terms of how the wickets produced. Inherently in India, I suppose apart from Mahali is the only wicket I've seen that has pace and bounce and not lavish spin, but it's obviously much higher, much more north than most of the other grounds. Yeah. Chennai has always had a reputation for spinning, so I don't think that should be a mystery to anybody. And there is nothing wrong with a side playing to their strengths, because that's happened since day one. It's just the problem is the degree to which you take it. So, it's not a precise science producing a wicket. But one thing was sure, that once India had lost the first test match, they had to take the draw out of the equation one way or other.
Certainly did that.
They did do that.
I'm just going on mute there for the reality is, and I look at the commentary and people are saying, why are we talking about the pitch being bad? Weren't the batters being bad? Because a lot of the wickets that actually fell were wickets that were straight balls. Now, it is an important concept. It is certain. I mean, I believe Crawley in the first innings played exceptionally well, and that was slightly different at that stage, pitch-wise. But the techniques of batters on these type of wickets is very much irrelevant to other aspects of how they approach it. What I'm getting at there is the adaptation to a pitch which is spinning was crucial. I mean, Crawley would often play a ball on the line and therefore the ball would spin, it would beat his bat, but he would not get out. He would not nick. He would cover his stumps, but he would allow the ball to spin away from the bat and therefore be inconsequential to his dismissal. And Rohit Sharma, the way he batted, he got 66 in the first innings. Now, that 66, under the circumstances, was quite substantial. and quite
But
notable.
he normally had a lot of seam bowling bowled at him. I think one of the features that was different is the ball having, in order to retain the colour, had that sort of slightly plastic appearance around it, which meant that it wouldn't be roughed up like a normal leather ball, and therefore, it was you sense that some of the dismissals of the non-turning delivery, the ball appeared to generate speed after landing. So people were like Rahana today was LBW to a ball that he was trying to cut that actually hit him before he could actually play the shot. So I thought the ball sort of came through to the batsman a bit quicker than they expected. And it'd obviously be a one-off scenario because I assume, correct me if I'm wrong, the next test match is daytime and with a red ball. So I think those sort of, the ball, I suppose it's a term I would use, which probably is incorrect, but the ball nipped on a bit like a seamer, so they actually were surprised by the pace. So, that was a phenomenal amount of LBWs for a spinning wicket.
And bowled as well, of course.
Yeah. But I do think that, and it was shown by the graph they showed at the end of the game, when Alistair Cook and Andrew Strice were talking about it, that actually, and it's only, you're talking inches, that actually the English spinners bowled a little bit more wider, which they would normally do, whereas, and there's a bit of an obsession with me with young spinners in the UK, given the change of rules around LBWs, bowls hit the stumps. So if you're bowling anybody, whether off spin or left arm spin or leg spin, if the batsman misses the ball, you're in the game. But if you bowl from too wide, your leg will be outside the line. So there's a lot of benefit for trying to get as close as you can to the stumps. And I think all the Indian spinners that I've seen over the last probably 4 or 5 years, they've definitely mastered that. If you speak to Phil Tufnell, he'll tell you he should, under the current regulations, he would have got twice as many wickets. I wouldn't be quite as confident as that, but I certainly would have got a lot more.
It's funny you mentioned Phil Tufnell. I ended up being on the Vaughan and Tuffers show when, after having been stuck in a lift with Michael Vaughan in the Lord's Test back in 2013. I was stuck there with, I don't remember that incident where Michael Vaughan, Damien Martin, myself, Jonathan Norman were all caught in that lift for an hour and a half in the middle of a test match. It was horrific. It was quite funny at the same time. All right, Aparna, you've been very quiet there.
I was just saying to you guys, I mean, I must be gloating, not bloating, Norman.
Gloating, not bloating. Okay. The reality.
What a thumping win for India, but must admit, 2-day test, that's bizarre. Well, I would say India planned and India executed their plans to near perfection. I don't agree what Chris might think, but on day one, of the test, bearing the toss, starting from there, almost everything went India's way. And England were rolled out for 112 runs, and even then India were finished strongly on 99 for 3, and then Akshar Patel, amazing. I mean, I'm so glad that he got an opportunity, and he's proved it. He was the star of the show with 6 wickets, while Ashwin gave him a good support. And as I think about the pitch, well, we knew that the pitch was dry, right? And I would not agree with what Chris think that if the pitch is like this, the IPL would be played. I mean, the pitch is same always for both the teams. That's what I think, and the conditions are same for both the teams. Which one comes out better, that's the winner. Complete. You can't just blame the pitch because pitch was dry. It was always expected to turn. Both Akshar and Jack Lee got plenty of turn, but the wickets fell to natural variation. And the straighter ones, that's the right way to say. And we knew that the turn will be quicker, and that means that it gives less time to the batsmen to adjust. And we knew it was only going to get worse as the game progresses. But to be quite honest, I mean, day 2 and this result, we knew that India was getting in the field today with all the aces, but in one session, England was all out, and especially Rohit Sharma ending the game with the 6 was the last cherry on the cake.
It's very relevant what you're saying now. We did have a comment here, Chris. I need your thoughts on this. There's a comment, and I'm just trying to get it back again, where they said that 8 out of the 22 matches that have gone only for 2 days were actually in England when that took place, which is an interesting stat, if that is true.
How many of those would have been since the Second World War, when they've now got covered wickets? You know, back in the day with no covers, and and Gravel admit it's a completely different game. All my point is, is this what we want Test cricket to be? Do we want it to be 2-day tests all the time?
No.
If it is, then why are we saying it's a good wicket?
Okay, look, I have to say this much.
Joe Root said in his interview that the pink ball skidded on. That's fine. If he comes out and says what he thinks, or questions the pitch, he'll get fined probably 25-30% of his match fee. So he's never going to do that. Kohli's never going to come out and say anything other than it was fine. So you can't listen to interviews because they're just being told, they have to. Obviously, they're put in front of the media, but they can't really say much. India were the better side, but India's batting lineup.
But even Kohli has said the batting performance wasn't good from either side. So
yeah, they didn't, but neither side batted well. India lost 8 for 40.
Yeah, but you can't just say India didn't bat it well, Chris. I mean, the performances for both sides was worse. The pitch was for both the teams.
Yeah. I agree.
I know. Like, I would admit, if India has performed really, really bad, and they should really change the attitude, come back with good thing. And that's what I think. England just lost the match. I think mentally, I don't know what just happened there. You might be able to tell me that better. But India, coming from after losing first match, even in Australia, they've been comparing. This has been a norm going now, that India losing first match of a test series and then winning the rest. And I can definitely see that happening in this test series as well, because I think not because their game has all of a sudden improved. No, it's all about the mentality. It's all about the mindset that you're in. And when the series started, England was in better mindset than India, I must admit. I don't know where they've lost. And coming from these 2 matches, especially being in Ahmedabad, where this pink ball day and night test has been played, I think it would have been a fresh start, especially after the 1-1. So whether it was the batting performance, whether the spinners got all the luck, or whatever, or the pitch was wrong, I would say with very, very clear. That's what my belief is pitch was same for both. The batting performance was bad in both the teams, though India come out a bit more, I think, clear why good, because of the mentality and the mindset.
I have to be honest, and David, I'm sure you would think this the same way. It is very normal for people to talk about a pitch when they lose. And I'm not being nasty, but it's true.
No.
Pitches very often come into play when you lose. Yeah. If you win, you could argue you might not have liked the pitch, but you're happy because the way the test match went. And whether you're in England or Australia, if you're on the Gabba when it's a green top, as opposed to the way that the Gabba was actually a very balanced pitch, which went against Australia in that test match. It is true. There are 2 sides to the story. The reality is both played on it. Both should have prepared for it as best they could.
Yeah, you're more equipped than others. And that's why I've always been quite reserved about making a judgment of making a judgment on the pitch unless both sides have played on it. You just can't base it on just one innings. The one downside, and this is not sour grapes against the results, is that and Chris will be aware of that, over a major number of years, since 2005, which is the historic series against Australia, which up until this game was the last test match to be shown free to air in the UK.
Right.
And That is really the real downside for me. It's that we fought long and hard to get international cricket, to inspire younger people to play, or older generation who can't afford cable TV. So the one opportunity they have to watch Test match cricket live, it doesn't even last 2 days. And that to me would be having the struggle of trying to get it live on TV, and it doesn't go the distance. That would be, regardless of the result, even if England had won, that would be a real negative for me, because it has been such a long battle to get to that situation. So I hope it doesn't stop the train.
I think that's an excellent point.
I think England might take it as a compliment. You know, in a way, they might sit there and think that India don't think they can beat them on good cricket wickets, and they've prepared a wicket to suit their strengths, and they have, and fair play. Why, you know, that might be it. Then I guarantee this summer in England that there'll be a much better balance between bat and ball, and it could be a good series, and you know the skills of all assets will come out. But you know, if India wants
I do, Chris, they won't need to.
Trust me, England does not think this loss is a compliment. The Indian side knows they can beat the English side. They are a far superior side. So don't kid yourself.
In India, I mean,
Well,
no,
in
they
India,
can
I'll
beat
tell you
them
what.
other places.
David,
as
hang
well.
on a second. Hang on. Before we get,
I'm serious. I find it quite offensive, actually, to go on about the pitch.
I'll tell you a
It'll
story.
be Chris versus Aparna and Priti.
Sorry?
I don't know what I'm saying that's wrong. You know, the pitch was poor.
No, I'm just hearing somebody. I mean, did you even see the match? I mean, there is a winner in the end. It was spectacular. And by the way, there is a reason why they don't play this day-night kind of game. This is a very irregularly played game, and it's not going to be the norm of Test cricket. It's once in a while it'll come up. I love it. 5 days is very boring. Some of the most boring matches I've watched have been these horrible, dragging 5-day Test matches, and I quite prefer 2 days full of action. And I thought the last 2 days were very exciting. I enjoyed it.
Hang on,
that's not Test cricket. That's not Test cricket.
Of the result.
The reality is that is David. You have to agree with that point. It's a travesty for it to be 2 days because of the free-to-air television. But at the same time, different dynamics, different demographics come into play when a game is full of action, despite finishing earlier. It is an interesting balance between traditionalists like myself, and I would argue, Chris and David, even yourself, to an extent, that when you have people who are, and I'm not saying that Aparna and Priti are new to cricket, I'm not saying that, but there is a revolution going on in cricket, such as the 100 in England. Where
no Indian is new to cricket, Norman.
No, I know that.
Yeah,
that's
quite offensive.
No, you don't get my point. You don't get my point.
The
reality is,
it's the religion, it's an emotion.
Trust me, we care about it a lot more than you do.
No, I didn't mean it negatively. I didn't mean it negatively. I don't mean it negatively at all. We have an example in England of the 100, correct? David and
I'm
Chris.
24 years old, and if I can talk cricket, then
look. Also, why don't you blame?
My country would be able to talk cricket. That's in how incredible India is and craze that they've got, and I'm proud of that.
I think you need to give credit to excellent bowling as well, and there were some good batting performances, and all some good fielding and all of that as well, and a very, very exciting, dramatic game that I think everybody enjoyed, except the people who lost.
If England had won this test, say England had won, I would have sat here and said exactly the same thing.
With all honesty,
I did in the first test. England won the first test, and I said that it was a poor wicket. I mean, it looks like the Gabba or the MCG on a flat day now in comparison. But if you preferred 2 days of drama, then
nobody's saying that they prefer 2 days. I'm just and I mean, you should blame England. I mean, why did they get bowled out that easily, that quickly? I mean, this could have gone for 3 days. I was predicting 4 days at least. But
Priti, again, Chris always said about the pitch from the very first day when we started doing this review of this test series. But let me tell you what, Siraj, if you watched the last series. So Siraj actually comes from a very, very poor background. He can't even afford, when he first started, he couldn't even afford a ball. And his parents, his father, used to tuk-tuk or a rickshaw you would call in
Yes.
India. He used to drive that, and then he would earn 100 rupees, which is $2 Australian. Right? So from that $2, he gave $1 to go and buy a tennis ball because he couldn't even afford a leather ball. Forget the ping ball and all that sort of different things that have started to come. Right? He would play on the side of the road with that tennis ball and bowling like that in Australia on his debut match. Pitch, ball,
Yes.
doesn't matter. If
Bring
you've
it
got
on.
talent, you can literally be in a shittest part of the world, probably on the sand, and still perform and show where you come from, what your roots are, how well you can perform, and that goes for both the teams. So pitch, everyone who's out there blaming the pitch and blaming the country because it's so poor, they don't know how to do it, this, that. Like, Britishers,
I've never
when
said
they were
that.
ruling our country, England used to play on the street
Not that
in
poor
India.
anymore.
In India,
I've never said
before we
that.
got
GDP just
independent.
overtook the
I mean,
UK.
you
Okay.
talk
So.
about just completely going off on a tangent. I've never cracked into India being. I've never ever said anything. All I've said
No,
is that
I'm just
India
saying that.
prepared
No,
a
no, I
wicket
get
to
your
suit
point.
the
I'm
Other
just
scoreline.
people has been saying. I'm not saying Chris for you. I'm just
Yeah,
It's
saying
I
exactly
know.
what you just said.
Those people
Why
need to
you don't
read
have
the
to take it
GDP
personally.
lists, I
I'm just
think.
saying
Okay.
that's the talk, but you did
Time.
say that the pitch was there.
Okay,
That
guys.
pitch is to
Okay.
blame.
The
Now,
pitch was
That's
poor.
not.
That's all I've said. And the pitch was poor. Whether
Okay,
you
for
agree or
David and
not,
my sake,
that's the facts.
for David and my sake, I'm
According
getting a
to
headache.
Chris.
I'm getting a headache because this is a great discussion, but I want to talk about the match for a moment.
Yes.
Just
Can
go back
we?
to the match. Now,
Yeah.
I'm just getting. There's a comment saying, Munchie's saying, Music Harmony, we have a big announcement, don't we? What is that all about? Can someone explain that to me? What's the big announcement we've got?
I think Music Harmony said that if England don't lose by an innings, that he'll reveal what his full name is. I think that's been a bit of banter that's been going on in the chat.
Okay, well, the Music Harmony, if you don't want me to delete you from the chat room, I want you to tell me who you are, because David, we've got a suspicion that Music Harmony could be an ex-girlfriend of mine or something. We're not sure exactly who this person is. So I want to find out who it is.
Right.
Music? He's not going to. I'm looking through, scrolling through the information. I haven't seen Music Harmony now. We'll find out later. Now, but Nalakshi Sharma is online. Now, Nalakshi's a devotee, David. We have devotees to this program that actually have actually fallen in love with Chris Vernon. That's another thing. And we've got some incredible relationships starting. It's quite a lovely thing having this. I'm calling this almost a chat room now, because we have such a group of people that follow us all the way along. It's been magnificent. Okay, back to the match. Now I'm going to take control here. We have to have. We need to be able to revere some of the things that have happened. Axar Patel's bowling. I was talking earlier about Joe Root. Now, Joe Root and Chris said he's a part-time bowler. I tell you what, when Joe Root has grandchildren sitting around him, he won't be talking about his double centuries. He'll be talking about his five that he took in India. I know that might sound flippant, but it's amazing how someone like Joe Root, and David, you detest this, it's amazing when a batter who's picked as a batter, who is a captain of the side, who has a lot of respect for his batting, and probably could well match Alistair Cook in terms of total runs scored if he plays long enough. He certainly is going to go to second because Graham Gooch is the only man in front of him. He will talk about his FIFA ahead of anything else he talks about to his grandchildren. Would you agree with that?
I can compare it to, because I don't know Joe that well, because he's sort of past my sort of involvement. But Michael Vaughan still talks about bowling Tendulkar at Trent Bridge. A ball that hit a rock, I think, to bowl him. Monty Panesar will always talk about getting Tendulkar out. I think it's his first Test match wicket. So, you know, Joe, I think, could bowl a lot more. He's had some issues with his back or whatever, but there was some stuff on social media that his father is anticipating that Joe will be talking about his 5 wickets for some years to come, and he'll be talking through every single delivery. But he bowled really well. I think the level of bowling, and actually, so just remember that was his debut. He'd never played Test match cricket before. So to get the number of wickets he did in his first game is an exceptional performance. really. And he learnt very quickly. He bowled a few, what I would say, quite floaty deliveries to Crawley, which he drove through the covers to start with. He obviously must have been quite nervous, but after that, he was on the money all the time. So it was outstanding.
Yeah, I mean, so the player of the match, it was Axar Patel, wasn't it? He got the player of the
Yes.
match.
Yeah, taking
Well,
11.
I was
when he
thinking
went-
it would be Ashwin or Akhtar, but I'm so happy that this local player got the man of the match. He was
Yeah, I think-
spectacular,
I
amazing.
Ashwin
don't
can't do it all the
think
time.
he will get a chance in this series at some point of time, and he's proven to be the sensation. Absolutely played fantastic. I mean, in the first two tests with 18 wickets, I mean that's a good number and speaks
But
for
if you look at
itself.
the flow of England's second innings, it was Axer who made the early incisions, and actually it was Ashwin who was leaking more runs. And if there was a way for England to score any runs, they'd obviously decided, well, forget the debutant, he's bowling too well. We'll go after the bloke who's just about to get 400 wickets. So I think that is testimony to how well Patel bowled. And I would also a particular mention about Joe Leach. I know at a personal cost that if you're a spinner in a team and you are the only spinner and a wicket is responsive to spin, like this one, there is unbelievable pressure on you because all the batsmen think, well, why aren't you taking 5 for nothing? All the seam bowlers sit back and say, well, it's got nothing to do with us anymore. It's down to you. So seam bowlers tend to be 3 or 4 of them. If they're batsmen, there's 6 or 7 of them. And then you're the only spin bowler like Joe was. I think it was an outstanding performance by him against a group of batsmen who can play spin.
I totally agree. Totally agree.
If you're not on the money, they will assault you. So
Yeah,
I think the level of spin bowler I thought was really, really excellent. And I think, as Kohli said at the end of the game, that actually it's exposed some technical issues on both sides, actually, which is, people say that about English batsmen, but it was also the same for some of the Indian players.
Absolutely.
They didn't quite have a clue of how they were going to score.
But it just shows the mental game as well, because you had, as we've just said, India were none for 49 in their last innings. The mental pressure was off them because they had a relatively small total to chase. They could be a lot more relaxed, not unlike the way that Joe Burns played against India back in Australia when India were all at 36. He looked like King Kong. He was 50 and scored a 6 to make that 50. It is true. It is a mental game. And the way that the England batters, some of them looked like they were like deer in front of headlights or a kangaroo in front of headlights. They seem to have lost the plot. In particular,
it's rabbits in the UK, Norman.
Sorry?
It's rabbits in the UK.
Oh, okay. I apologise. Haven't got too many kangaroos there. I apologise. I've actually noticed that Chris, when the team's gone well, he's a lot closer to the camera. When his team ultimately loses, he tends to go like that, and you can barely see him.
I'm worried there's a fist is going to come flying out of my laptop and hit me in the face if I'm not careful. For speaking truth,
that fist will have coloured fingernails probably.
Probably.
So what is the situation, Norman, with
your fingernails?
With the ICC World Championship?
Pretty your fingernails.
Does that mean that India have qualified for that or not? Norman?
What? Sorry?
The ICC sort of World Championship, does that mean that India have qualified for that to play New Zealand?
Not quite yet, no.
Not quite yet. They're on their way, though. My prediction was that England will not make the final, which came true.
No, England I think needed to win.
They needed 2 wins.
Yeah, both
my prediction is that India will take that spot. I think they'll win the next test. And as some commentators were saying that they were actually very confident that India would win the 4th test, this was the test that there was a big question mark on. It could have gone draw or
if
the
they
other
don't
way.
qualify, who does? Australia?
Okay, if it's a draw, Australia. Yeah. If England happened to win the 4th test, which could happen, it could happen. That would
then Australia goes through.
Australia goes through, but England effectively now are sweating on that game going their way because, in fact, no, it doesn't matter whether the game goes that way or not. England are absolutely out.
Yes.
Right.
So England are absolutely out. If England win the fourth Test match, all they're doing is allowing Australia to go through.
I don't think they want that.
No, they won't want that. Actually,
No.
David, what the mindset of somebody who is English playing a match with the potential, if they do win the match, knowing that Australia will leapfrog them all and go into a World Test Championship final, would that sit well?
I think they're very pro-New Zealand. I don't know that. So,
Every one of those England players will 100% rather would want Australia to be in that final because they're not going to give up a Test match. They're going to want. They're not even thinking about the World Test Championship. I don't think they're that bothered. I don't think they've gone into this series expecting to be in the World Test Championship final. So they'll be that they're hoping that Australia go through because if they do, it means they've won and drawn the series, which would be.
I think and to draw the series, Chris is right. It would be a fantastic achievement.
One of the biggest achievements in English cricket history, without a doubt.
It's
like
against India with the strength that they have.
Drawing this series would be a bigger achievement than beating Australia in Australia this winter. I'm not saying it would be
the consequences of the result.
I'm not saying it would be a more popular. I think they'd rather win the Ashes, but in terms of a cricket achievement, drawing a series in India in these conditions is huge.
Well, it's going to be on the same ground, isn't it? It's going to be on Ahmedabad, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it will do. And before anybody sort of decides what the wicket is, it is very difficult to prepare Test match wickets side by side when the gap between the games is so little.
That's true.
At least they've got a couple of extra days now.
David, that's incredibly relevant. Can you explain to me how the ICC, let alone any other board, would allow a test venue to be used straight after each other? Forgetting COVID for a moment, I don't want to talk about COVID.
Well, but that is have to consider, Norman. We can't.
That's the only reason. That's the only reason it's happening.
Well, it shouldn't have happened. I don't understand why that needs to have happened.
Well,
I mean,
but we should be glad and thankful that there's games on.
There were 60,000 people in the so this is
everyone is adjusting to the new normal. This is the new normal, maybe.
Yeah.
New challenge.
India's dealt with COVID very well though, and there were a lot of people in that stadium that didn't have masks. I mean, it's but the time between the tests is very, very short. That's true.
Okay,
it's such a big ground room, and I think the dressing rooms are about 2 miles apart from each other. There seems to be one side walking off in one direction, the other one the other way. But it looks fantastic. I can't wait to see a one-day international in normal times or an IPL game with 110,000 people in there. It'd just be phenomenal.
Not on that sort of wicket, though. It wouldn't be a very exciting game.
I think it'll be very exciting.
Actually, it's not 110,000. It's 132,000.
Really? Okay. Yeah, we're getting different numbers here.
No, hang on. They've quoted 132,000.
And is that all seated, Norman, as well?
Yeah.
Well, that's a good question.
Stand only.
I think that could well be the stand. It could well be stand only in some cases. Right. Can I just go back to COVID for a moment? In Australia, we've had games only recently, and we've got now, I think we're up to the 38th day in Sydney of 0 new cases of COVID. Can you believe that, Chris? 38 days of 0.
Yeah, I mean, but that's Australia. You know, we've got another 4 months of lockdown in this country. They announced this week that social distancing might come to an end in the middle of June. So, you know, just because it's all clear in Australia doesn't mean that it's all clear in India, all clear in England.
No,
you didn't. Trust me, India dealt with it better. And we had our lockdown much earlier, actually, when it started last year in March.
No, but they haven't let me finish my point. You haven't let me finish my point. I was in the middle of my point. 38 days of 0 COVID, right? Okay, that's a great result. No matter what the circumstance, whether we're isolated or not. But what we have done is when we're at the venues, the SCG, for example, insisted that we wore masks. Insisted that, despite having 0, we insisted to wear masks. You had to sit at your seat with a mask on, and the cameras from the SCG would look at you. And if you put your mask off, a gentleman come up to you and would say, "Put that mask on." Now, if I'm being really honest with you, and I don't care what country it is, India, England, America, that level of enforcement should have occurred in that venue at Ahmedabad. That level of enforcement should happen in Florida. That level of enforcement should happen at a London
Well,
ground.
I think India is a bit more confident on the level because the vaccine. India supplies 80% of the vaccine medication to the world, just for the facts. Now, vaccine. India has got the biggest contract of supplying to the world. Even if they're helping the poorest country after apparently not being the most developed country itself, which is I think I'm very proud of. And then India has started and done about I think a few million already has been vaccinated. That's the
That's
normal general
fantastic.
public, apart from the frontline workers. And Australia has just started. So I think on that level, people are a bit more relaxed, and that should not be the case, though. But you know
But
what?
you're missing
You
my
would say
point. I'm just saying
1.5
to you that
meter
every
distancing.
ground.
How can you do distancing when there's 1.3 billion people and the space is that much?
But hang on. Every ground in the world, regardless of population, you still go into a stadium which has an element of numbers of seats. What I'm getting at is the enforcement of wearing masks when moving between seats and even in your seat is crucial. And I think that's not about. It shouldn't be about culture, numbers of people around them. That's an example why Australia is quite exemplary.
Yeah, but
I
there
know
was
we're
no
lucky
social
we're in
distancing,
Ireland.
Norman. We've seen it. People were moving around. You were not supposed to move around. You can't hold the audience on that level. I mean, even in SCG, I've had so many times we've seen it. Like people were not allowed to, go and run from other stand to the next stand. They were moving around the whole lot. I mean, you can't do that.
Even Australian
No matter
Open,
what the
they had
government
a
might
lot of
decide.
issues. People were
Okay,
not in
I'm
masks, and you could see it on the television.
But even in New Zealand, when they're showing rugby matches, nobody was wearing a mask. They seem to have resorted back to normal. But taking up Chris's point, actually, the announcement on Monday, I think, gave a lot of hope to a lot of people around sports, not only in terms of participation, and more for actually, this is not professionally, this is more recreational, that young children can start to play sport. That actually, if everything works out the way it should do, by the time the Indian series has happened at the end of our summer, then there should be normality. But there's a lot of hoops to jump through or whatever. So
I think what Norman's saying, and I agree with his point, is that they should be trying their best to enforce these measures if possible. I don't think he was saying that India are doing it poorly.
No, I
I
didn't
know
say
you got
that.
They
defensive
are
about
not.
it. I
Yeah.
think what he's
No, I'm
saying
not
is that
knocking India,
they should be trying their best wherever possible. Because I read
Yeah.
in the news this week that they're worried that there might be another spike in India. That they're
Yeah, I
potentially
don't
worried.
think that will be
And
the
if they are
case.
worried, then
Yeah, the country had actually gone through the strictest lockdown on the planet in March, and 1.3 billion people actually did social distance. And you have to understand the numbers, the minuscule number of even affected cases and the fatalities relative to the population. To really, that they have been one of the few countries that have actually dealt with it, and very fortunate actually that we have more people dying of car accidents, to be honest, every year than the total
Okay.
COVID number.
All
And
right.
you had 1.3 billion people be extremely conscientious, I must say, come together as a country, unite, and I don't, I look in America, all of that, was that's rubbish. You should see what
Okay.
the
All right.
riots and anarchy that was going out here.
Sorry
So I
to
think they've
talk.
done very well. And
No, okay.
anyway.
Sorry to talk over you, pretty there, but we are getting some commentary about, is this eyes on cricket or eyes on politics or eyes on COVID? And it's
Exactly.
but I
Why are
think
we
we
talking
need
about COVID? Let's get back to the game.
Okay. Let's get back to cricket. David, I want
Yeah.
you in a nutshell to tell me what you would do selection-wise for England.
What, for the next Test match?
Yes. Well, it's a bit too late to do it for this Test match.
Yeah, they've got one. They've got. I think the one scenario that is really challenging teams is that they have to move everybody around two teams at once because of players in the bubble, because they can't bring people in and out. And I know that some of the players that haven't played at all find that really difficult. I personally, I think that the question will be around depending on having seen how this wicket played and what the next one will be in terms of how dry it will be, do you need 3 seam bowlers? Or do you need another spinner, or do you want another batsman, one or the other? I would suggest that maybe they don't need 3 seamers, and they might need just another. I would play Dom Bess. I think we desperately need to get him back on the horse to play, and to play on a wicket when you're part of a 3 spin attack, there is some comfort around that for him to perform. So, but I'd keep all the batsmen the same, because one of the problems is that the people that you might have as alternatives, what practice have they had? What else have they been doing that would justify? All they've had is net after net after net. So there was a reason in olden times where they had the up-country matches between test matches, so that they would actually have a selection option. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it becomes more difficult if there's no meaningful cricket between matches. So at the bottom line, you asked me the question. Obviously, Dom Bess will be part of the equation, and go from there. Really,
I think that's excellent. They'll probably just see it. There's probably no team in the world that would have scored, anything notable on that wicket this week. So they're batting. They're not going to read too much into it. They'll say, "How can we be better?" But they'll just look at it and say, "Well, it is what it is." They might just rest everyone. Archer's probably not fit, so I expect Wood to play. Best will definitely come in for Broad. And you know what? They might just say, well, why do we want to run Jimmy Anderson into a ground or knacker him out when he's not going to be? There's no point. They might just play Ollie Stone or Chris Wokes just to give him a game and see how they go. Because
the only variation to that, Chris, is that they did say that the pink ball didn't reverse.
Yeah.
The fact they've got a red ball now, that actually reverse swing might be a bit more relevant.
I just think
there's no better exponent than Jimmy of reversing.
No, I agree. But they've said that they want to rotate him, and he's played 2 tests in a row. He's played 2 tests here, and he's not as those. If the pitch is the same, you might as well you could just pick 5 spinners. I don't think you need to pick 2 seamers, do you really? Especially if you've got Stokes. So, Best will definitely play. I think that Wood will play instead of Archer. Archer's clearly not 100% fit. And yeah, they might bring in Amir Verdi. I think is on the tour, isn't he, Grav? Is he the Surrey spinner? They might just pick 4 spinners and say, let's see what they're made of, because India will probably do the same, won't they? I mean, depends on the wicket. It could be quite a flat wicket, so India don't lose. We'll see.
I think you've put up a great point, Chris. Why wouldn't England play as many spinners as they've got? Because the reality is, if that's what type of pitch it is, then bring on the bowlers that will exploit it the most.
I think the pitch might be very different. I think it could be flat and boring. I think it could be a 5-day 700 plays, 500 plays, 300 for 4. Because India don't want to. India go through with a draw, I think. So they'll be preparing a flat wicket to make sure.
Why run the risk of losing the toss on a spin pitch? All they're doing is actually having high risk doing that. So,
but then again, England did win the toss and batted first for a moment there. I don't know whether. Okay, I don't think India will go about it any differently. They'll put another turning wicket on. I really can't imagine they're going to put a flat wicket for a number of reasons, because if they're putting a turning wicket on, their chance to stay as high as they have at winning. Putting a flat track on, that you may say that may lead to a draw, but it could also lead to England batting well on the first day and perhaps making it difficult for India. I'm not so sold on
I'm only going back to the venues that I've played in. When you've got multiple matches, this is more in county games like festivals, that the wicket tends, because they can't water the ground all the time and have the normal week's preparation. Like I saw a picture of the ground or the square, I think probably on Saturday. So you're only about 5 days out. It looked like a bowling green, the amount of grass on it. But obviously the grass disappears by the time the match. But that's their choice. So I think it would be very difficult to produce a flat wicket, because it happens to be the second game on the venue, because it's dry. So you haven't, and you can't have, flooding the pitch during the previous game to get the right water balance, because you can run the risk of actually affecting the game that's actually played the first game. So they would have, I would imagine, kept it dry. So yeah, I would imagine it to be similar to what we've just played on.
Right.
But I'm not an Indian groundsman, so you just.
But do selectors have any more accessibility to view a ground before a match than anyone else? Or is it
This is a very, very sensitive area, Norman.
I think they get to. I think they. I think I think that they get to ask, and Grav will probably have to reply, not give too much away, but I'm sure that there is communications a week, few days out from the test match, and I'm sure Mr. Shastri or the selectors will be saying to the groundsman, "This is what this pitch will be doing, and we expect it to do that." And I'm sure it happens in England. I'm sure it happens in Australia. I don't think the curator or groundsman just makes the wicket that he wants to make. I'm fairly certain that he is told by the management team, this is what the wicket will do, and if it doesn't do that, then we'll be very disappointed, and you probably won't have a job next week.
That's happened when the West Indies turned up and played at Perth, when they had Holding, real rapid attack, and beat Australia in, I think, 3 days or whatever. I think the curator was looking for a different job after that.
Yeah.
Chris is right. You will never get any groundsman to admit that anybody's sort of put undue pressure on them. And I know in the UK they have a real difficult balancing act of, selling tickets and having income, which is important to the future of the game in the country. And, if you don't play, you have to give money back. So, the ground authority will have a view about, we want it to last at the optimum time. So I've been told for a test match is that if it finishes after tea on the 4th day would be the optimum time, because the 5th day, you have to, you may only have a few overs to bowl. You have to get all the security, everything like that. So, it is. If you're asking the question about pressure on groundsmen, I've spoken to Shane Warne on various occasions, or any Australian, who are adamant that they don't put any pressure on the ground staff. That might be up for debate. That anywhere in the world, in terms of people want to win. So what's the best way to win?
I'll give you my best example.
Play to the strengths of your team. It's like coming here. If you'd like to come to India, and it suddenly was knee deep in grass, there would be quite a lot of people saying, "Why are we playing on this?"
That's true. I mean, Tommy Parker, who was the SCG curator for a long time, he was an excellent, probably I would argue one of the best curators in the world. He championed getting enough bulleye soil, which is rare and very specific to the SCG, and creates the pitch that it does because of it's a natural pitch. It's not a drop in. It never has been, probably never will be. They have enough bulleye soil to last a century or two. It was amazing ground. Tommy Parker, who I knew very well, used to say to me, it doesn't take much for them to check up the vibe of an actual curator. They're not normally poker faced. They're fairly emotional about their pitches, and you can see the type of ground by the way they are.
It's their pride and joy, isn't it?
Exactly. Do you realise how much the curators are getting paid? I'm not sure whether it's the same in other countries around the world, but in Australia, sacred grounds such as the SCG, I'm sure it'll be the same for Lords, they get paid $300,000 or $400,000, if not more. They get paid an exorbitant fee, and yes, and it is something of interest. Okay, we can, and I must say, I heard a few comments about time. We've gone an hour and 13. I reckon we could talk for 4 hours. This is such a lovely group.
Can we just answer one point? Music harmony.
Two girls and Chris will be talking for about 3 days if they stick to the same subjects. And
Music harmony in the chat has asked about 45 times the same question. So I think we should. He just asked.
Ask it.
He asked about the pink ball and our thoughts on the pink ball, and is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? And where we think pink ball cricket should go. And I would just scrap it, especially in India, especially in England. Don't think you need it. Australia, I get it. I understand why they're doing it, but that's such a different game today. You've literally taken pretty much all the seamers out that test match because that ball won't swing. It swung for maybe an over I think Sharma and Bumrah swung an over each, and Anderson swung it for an over. You're taking all the seams out. I get it in England or Australia, it swings a bit more, but the lacquer on that ball basically takes the only. What's the main way that seamers bowl well in India? And it's reverse swing. The only time that seamers do well is if you can get the ball to reverse. Generally, that pink ball has 2 inches of paint on it that just basically means it won't reverse. I just don't think it's needed. That ground would have sold out for 3-4 days of that Test match, regardless of when it was played. And they sell out.
Chris, what was the reason for the day-night match?
I honestly, I think that the ICC maybe are trying to introduce it as a normal, as a standard thing, and they obviously want to try and get crowds in and try and appeal to a different. I just don't think it's needed. I just, as more of a purist, I think that if you want to get kids and people watching cricket, you've got the 100, you've got the Big Bash, you've got the IPL, you've got the T10. Like, that's where you fall in love. That's where you get the entertainment. That's where you get the big sixes, and then they grow into the game and start loving it from there. So, maybe in Australia it's proved to be okay, but sides are getting skittled in these pink ball Test matches for 30. India got skittled for 30. We got skittled for 50 in New Zealand. West Indies got rolled for 60 or 70 here. It's just a bit gimmicky, I think, and I think that it will get phased out at some
point.
point.
In the UK, Chris, and you know that when they're playing the West Indies, they decide to pick a period of weather when it's about -10. So
yeah, I think
huddled up.
It was in September or August, wasn't it? It was freezing, and the problem is just New Zealand have no chance. They've got no chance in English conditions. No one has in the pink ball, against those guys, and I just don't think it's needed. I think that it's just a poor gimmick. It's a waste of a Test match here. This series 100% would be better off 4 tests in normal day conditions with a red ball. That's it.
I totally agree. I totally agree. And the reality is,
if you ask a question about the ball, Norman, if you're asking the question, and I think that, and I might be way off the mark here, I don't think when the spinners bowl with a red ball, it will get that forward momentum that the pink ball has done in this game of skidding on and actually surprising the batsmen have been a little bit quicker than they thought it was going to be, because they probably wouldn't have practiced against it that much. No. So I just think that it not necessarily in this game, because it seemed to behave the same way all the way through, but in Australia and England, it becomes a tactical weapon in terms of whether you should be batting and bowling when the game's played under lights. I think that's very messy for the game to do that. The game is a fundamental game, should be played, with a red ball, and do it that way. I think that's a great complication. It doesn't work in the UK because of the weather, and I don't quite understand. The love of the game in India is so great. I can't see how it can affect the crowds. But
that's true. All right, guys. I'm very wary of time. I've got to wrap this up a little bit. I want to get final comments from everybody. I'll wrap it up. Okay. Pretty final comments.
All right. The 2 highlights of this game were Ashwin's 400th wicket, how brilliant, and of course Akshar Patel, amazing. I'm very excited for the fourth match. I predict India will win that as well, and I just think it's been a brilliant series. It's been great for cricket, great for the crowds, great to see fans so excited around the world. I enjoyed the last 2 days, so I'm very happy, and I'm very, very proud of this team. And look, life is about the cards that you're dealt with and how you play those. And I think they've done very well. And I think that they'll continue to do that. So I'm looking forward for the next match.
Aparna, who is actually sharing this platform with Cricket Conversations with Aparna Saini. We mustn't forget that. So you're viewing on double platforms. Go ahead, Aparna.
Yeah. So I think I heard 21 wickets out of 30 was taken by the straighter balls, and Joy Root did mention that this pink ball surprised them. It did skid a bit off the wicket, so I hope that they able to come back and it won't be a 2-day sort of a thing again, because as much as it was interesting, it gets a bit boring to watch that sort of thing again. Even Kohli said that the batting wasn't good from either side, so hopefully that improves. That's point noted, and have to give the credits to the bowlers though. Akshar Patel taking 11 wickets, being only his second match after the debut. Absolutely sensational to watch. For Chris, poor Johnny Bistro only got a chance and got out for a duck in both the innings. I hope he can come back and prove it for the team like Akshar Patel has, because he was really looking forward for the opportunity. That's really, really bad. And hopefully England can give a good competition to India and we get to see some great cricket. But for Norman, you have been supporting Team India all summer. Who do you really want to win the next game? Continue with India, or are you going to jump to England because you want Australia making the championship final? So show us the true, real color. Which one is that? Blue?
Show us the real Norman.
Australia or
Well, the real
England?
Norman has got bad hair to start with. Look, and I'm being really honest with you. I actually don't think Australia deserved to be in that final.
That's not the question. That's not the question, Norman.
The question is, who do you have been supporting India all summer, right? So who do you want really to win the next match? Are you going to continue with India? Are you going to jump to England? Or now you want Australia winning because you want them to make to the championship final? So truly, with all heart.
I just need to get something on my face on the forehead here. I'm starting
If he doesn't want Australia to be in the World Test Championship final, then that's a crazy thing.
Okay, I'll be brutally honest. I don't want Australia to be in the final. Why? Because I'm sick.
They don't deserve it.
They don't deserve it.
That doesn't.
They're playing poorly.
Doesn't matter.
They don't deserve it. Sorry?
Why does that matter? Surely you're just supporting your country. I bet if India were in the same spot, Preeti and Aparna wouldn't sit here and go, India don't deserve to be in that World Cup final. So
you're being very presumpus. You can't say that.
The reality
after being hammered.
The reality is the reality is Australia do not have. Okay, the reality is Australia has no control over this result. So Australia can't even begin to consider. Including fans.
But are you hoping, Norman? Are you hoping that?
Of course, I'm hoping that Australia make the final. But
so now you're going to jump to England side because
you want England to win. That's fine. You've got to support your country no matter what, haven't you? Regardless of if they deserve it, you're always going to support the team.
Okay, I'm supporting Australia, yes, but I'm not going to say I want England to beat them or I want England to do anything to damage that to make Australia win. That's not the way I like to do it. If Australia get into it, that'll be great.
India or England? India or England?
India.
Oh, okay. Thanks. All the viewers, they would want to know that because they were getting a bit of a mixed vibe.
Okay. Shall I go? My heart wants one country, my head wants the other. Is that a fair point?
Yeah. You can say that.
Okay. My heart wants Australia, but my head says India.
There you go. You've answered the question. You want Australia to be in the final. That's
exactly right.
Okay, I've just realised that there's a comment there about how good looking I am. Who said that?
I think we put you in a spot, Norman. Probably you didn't expect this.
Is that with
I
your
didn't expect
the question. Regardless of who you, regardless of where your loyalty, your loyalty should always be with your country, regardless of if they deserve it, if they do it. Of course, you're going to want your team to win.
And that's a fair comment, of course. That's true. But I'm happy for cricket
and big
to
heart
be the winner.
Indian fans. Some Indian guy has said, "We still love you, Norman."
We still
there you
love
go. All right. Now, David and Chris, you've got a minute each.
Go on, Chris.
After you, David.
Right.
Sorry?
Stars of this test match. Congratulations to Ashwin for 400 wickets. I think Akshar Patel was outstanding. On the England side, same with Leach. I thought Ben Folkes did outstandingly behind the stumps and shown himself to be a real candidate to keep. And I think Zach Crawley, I know it seems ages ago, that actually the way he started to bat at the top of the order shows a real player of quality who I think will do outstandingly well in Australia. But congrats to India. They were the best team on the day. But I think, I hope Don Best plays the next game, and I want England to win. If we can achieve a draw, and then play in England, I think what I've seen of Australia, what I see of England now, that I see the Ashes coming back to the UK. So that's the dream ticket, Norman. So, but I think for the next Test match, I think it might be a very similar type of wicket, but with a red ball. It'd be interesting to see the red how that behaves. But I would want England to win, and I hope they do.
Excellent, Chris.
Actually, I'm going to take a slightly different view. I'm not going to reiterate my points on the conditions because they won't change. I actually think it's disappointing, this Test match, because it's taken the gloss off Ishan Sharma playing 100 Test matches as a seam bowler.
Yeah,
probably won't happen again. With these wickets that they're playing at the moment, there probably won't be another Indian seamer that plays 100 Tests. And his career has been fantastic, and he took the first wicket and hasn't bowled an over since. So I think that Axar Patel is just bowling well in those conditions. I don't think England will be looking into it too much. They'll obviously want to try and improve, and they'll just see the last Test as a win-win. Really, they're not expected to win. If they can get a result, brilliant. I think a 2-1 series loss, I know it's slightly negative, but will be seen as a massive bonus. How many sides in the last 10 years in India have won a Test, drawn a Test, let alone won a Test? It doesn't really happen. So there'll be a very different side when India play them in England this summer. England will go into that as heavy favourites, and rightly so. And I would expect England to beat them in England. England to win. The Ashes is bubbling up to be a brilliant series. If it goes Anderson, Archer, Wood and Stone as a 4-man pace attack, that takes Australia's fear factor at the Gabba and Perth out of it with the pace and bounce. So one last thing, there's been more questions on the 100 and stuff. We obviously can't answer all today, but we'll try and answer them next time. I'll jot them down. But yeah, no, I think it was a shame I think Ishan Sharma could have had more headlines this Test. I think that his career has been fantastic, and fair play to an Indian seamer having a career like he's had.
Chris, Ashwin answered your question today. Did you saw that?
Who, sorry?
Ashwin answered your question today. You asked, he said he would be retiring in 3 or 4 years.
Exactly, that's right.
So he answered your question. That's
brilliant.
Good.
And that's what I said. That's what I thought he would. And that's what I said. I thought he would do. So I'm pleased that I got it slightly right. But these guys have done well. I hope that someone like Axar Patel doesn't just end up playing 20 Tests in India because of the conditions. I think that his and you're going to slate me for saying this, but I think that his bowling performance in this Test match has been slightly marred by the fact that Joe Root, who's a part-timer at best, took 5 for 8. Showed how good a pitch it was to bowl on, and I'm not taking it away from him, but Joe Root's now got the 11th best figures in Test history for an average per wicket, and he's at best a part-timer. So
Michael Clark got 6 for 9 as well, and he would argue he was part-time.
Okay, guys. Your last comments.
Okay, my last comments are the following. Hang on, I'm just trying to get Pretty on screen. We're losing Pretty every time. Hang on, I was trying to.
You've got 1 minute and 20 seconds.
Okay. The reality is this. In an hour's time, I'm going to be talking with Merv Richards in Antigua, and we're going to next week have the likes of Viv, Kirtley, and a number of other people on there. And the reality is that that's what's going to happen in an hour's time. We have had a magnificent Test so far in terms of drama and all the aspects. I love it to death, whether it's 5 or 2 days. The reality is we're moving into a 4th Test shortly. I'm expecting all of us here on the panel will be a part of that. We're going to have interactions with legends in between. David, I want you to be a part of some of those. We want you to, perhaps with your efforts, get some people that you may think are worthy of talking to. as specials. We'd love to do that as well in this program because
I need to speak to Adam Holyoke to get to say that he's forgiven me for leaving him out. So.
he was wanting to be here. It's 2:30 in the morning. That's why he couldn't. So we'll get him at next test will be a more appropriate time. He'll be on, so don't worry. So we're going to have a lot more guests. We're going to have great events coming up. I'm so happy to be here with everyone here. Chris, you're fantastic. Pretty and Palmer, you're fantastic. And David, you're a breath of fresh air, even though it's dark around you at the moment. You look rather gloomy in that background, but that's all right. The reality
Thanks,
is
David, for having for joining our
it's been an
platform.
honour to meet you all and be part of the program.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Parna,
you.
what did you say?
No, I was just saying thanks, David, for joining our platform. It's been an absolute pleasure to have someone like you on the show.
No problem.
It's funny, Chris, Parna doesn't say that when we finish the episode. She doesn't go, it's an absolute pleasure to have Chris on. I'm only joking. I'm only joking. Now, Chris,
all right, this is Norman Gottschalk.
My battery keeps dying.
This is Eyes on Cricket with Norman Gottschalk. We're leaving today with a very long session. The numbers have been through the roof, by the way. They've been fantastic tonight. Chris, I must thank you specifically. You've been wonderful for every single match. You're on time. You're excellent. I appreciate you. So everyone, good night. We're going to have more time to view, like, and share Eyes on Cricket. We're going to interact with people. Plenty more sessions to come. Watch the live streams. We're going to have a truckload on there. So good luck to you all. Thank you.
Both channels, Eyes on Cricket with Norman Gottschalk and Cricket Conversation with Ivana Seni. We want more views. Come on.
All right, guys. Of course, Cricket with Aparna Saini is a refreshing, great perspective as well. Aparna's contact, I'm not going to say based on female or male, it's irrelevant. It's informative and very, very good. Pretty, thank you very much. All right, guys. See you next time. All right. All the best.
Bye.
Take care.